Hi, my name is Frank Schaefer, and I have a question for you. And I'm not kidding. Will you hide a Jew in your attic? Or put it this way, what is Tucker Carlson trying to do? Now, I'm going to be quoting some people here, Washington Post articles, New York Times articles, for some information. So I'm going to be looking down at the screen like this for a little bit of time when I read, because I want to get some things accurate. So forgive me for not making eye contact with you, but this is important. Tucker Carlson is elevating anti-Semitic ideas on the political right, most recently through his super friendly interviews with Hitler-admiring so-called influencer Nick Fuentes. According to a Washington Post essay by conservative columnist Mark Theisen in his article, No Enemies to the Right, Fuentes is, according to him, a fascist. On his podcast, Tucker Carlson's friend Fuentes said that, quote, Hitler was, excuse the language, fucking really cool. Carlson's friend often yells, Heil Hitler, and announces, quote, Hitler is awesome. Hitler was right. Carlson's friend is a Holocaust denier who blatantly declares, in quote, the Holocaust did not happen, according to Theisen's article, and whom has called for the extermination of what he calls the perfidious Jews who, quote, practice magic rituals and need to be given the death penalty straight up. These are all quotes from Theisen's article. When Tucker Carlson's friend, Groyper Army, takes power, I ask again, will you hide a Jew in your attic? You know, when I grew up, the great heroes of World War II were the Christian families that hid Jews like Anne Frank in their attics because of their Christian Reformed Calvinist faith. They believed that Jews needed to be hidden and not turned over to the Nazis in Europe. And many courageous Christians stood forth and lost their own lives in hiding Jews from the Nazis. I'm reminded of my family friend, Corrie ten Boom, who died in 1983. She was a Dutch Christian writer and public speaker who was a family friend of my evangelical leader father, Francis Schaeffer, and my mother, Edith Schaeffer, who founded the Christian ministry of L'Abri Fellowship. And she would visit us occasionally. And along with her sister, Betsy ten Boom, she and her family had hidden Jews during World War II in their home at great risk. And they were caught. And she was arrested and sent to Ravensbrück concentration camp for her crime of hiding a Jew. Her most famous book, The Hiding Place, was a biography that recounted the story of her family's efforts and how she found and shared hope in God while she was imprisoned at the concentration camp. And that used to be the story of so many evangelical Christians. This was long before Donald Trump and the MAGA movement, let alone Fuentes and Tucker Carlson and where we've gone now. But that used to be the heritage of my people, the people I came from. And what of Roman Catholic Italy and Roman Catholic Spain? Was it only Protestant believers like Corrie ten Boom, evangelicals like my parents were, who protected Jews? No, actually, after forced by the Germans to introduce race laws in Italy, Mussolini found that there were so many Roman Catholics and Roman Catholic priests on a local level, hiding Jews, helping them escape, making sure that many Jews were not deported to the concentration camp of Fossili and then on to Germany, that the race laws in Italy were very hard to apply because of the resistance by ordinary people. And the same happened in Spain. In fact, Franco, who was himself a fascist dictator, was so hesitant to honor the Germans' wishes in this anti-Semitic matter that Jews would flee to Spain, hiding under the cloak of Holy Church. that had such a strong influence in Franco's life that, albeit all his other sins as a dictator and a tyrant, were put aside in this one matter of protecting Jews. And in France, despite the collaboration of the Vichy government, many French Protestants of the Huguenot tradition, as well as Roman Catholics, stood forth and protected their Jewish population. With sorry exceptions, but nevertheless, whether in France or in Holland or in Italy or in Spain, this was the Christian tradition that Tucker Carlson is so ready to discard. And his friends like J.D. Vance and others will not speak about as they support him in these efforts. Conversely, to the lasting shame of some of the bishops of the church in Germany, the Lutherans, the Roman Catholics, and others who went along with the horrible program of eliminating the Jewish people, to the lasting shame of some Italians who did not speak up, and to some French prelates who did not speak up. Today, the reputation of the Christian church is still blighted. And yet we take a ray of hope, speaking of Western civilization, as Tucker Carlson does so falsely, in the fact that even in that blighted moment of history, people like Corrie ten Boom stood forth. Tucker Carlson's Fuentes, who upholds that tradition as somehow wonderful, also calls women, quotes, according to Theisen's article, whores and sluts and stupid, dirty bitches, and says a lot of women, according to Theisen's article, quoting him, want to be raped. He defends racial segregation, declaring, enough with Jim Crow stuff, who cares? Oh, they had to drink out of a different water fountain, big fucking deal, end quote, and asserts white people are every single bit justified in being racist. Now, I have a podcast called In Conversation with Frank Schaeffer, and maybe someone slips through who shouldn't be on my podcast sometime. I don't know. But the idea of having someone on my podcast who says, enough with Jim Crow stuff, who cares? Oh, they had to drink out of different fountains, big fucking deal, and shouts Heil Hitler, would never get on my podcast, and I would interrupt the podcast immediately if anything like that was said, but not Tucker Carlson. Carlson's fixation has taken explicitly religious form that even his pal Fuentes hasn't yet expressed. Tucker Carlson is now targeting the Judeo-Christian American consensus. Carlson wants to undo it. For instance, a recent theme of Carlson's is that the Old Testament, the Jewish Bible, get it, is dark and tribal and evil, while the New Testament, the part subscribed to only by good white Christians, get it, is the fount of all enlightened Western values. We've heard this before, as Carlson explained in an August podcast. On a recent reading of the Old Testament, he was, quote, shocked by the violence in it and shocked by the revenge in it, the genocide in it. By contrast, he explained this month, while the Fuentes controversy was unfolding, as if sort of commenting on it, quote, Western civilization is derived from the New Testament. Then Carlson added, in case you would misunderstand him, the core difference between the West and the rest of the world, not just Israel, but every other country, is that we don't believe in collective punishment because we don't believe in blood guilt. Carlson then continued, quote, a Christian understanding, it does not derive from any other religion. To hammer the point home, Carlson added this, Christianity alone unique, makes that claim. Will you hide a Jew in your attic? Carlson is pushing an open Jew-hating door. Heritage Foundation President Kevin Roberts made a video defending Carlson's Fuentes interview. the author of Project 2025, defended Carlson's Fuentes interview and said the think tank would not be policing the conscience of Christians. Tell that to the Christians who hid Anne Frank in their attic. Tell that to the thousands of Dutch Christians who were executed by the Germans, shot along with the Jews they were hiding. After other Republicans criticized Mr. Carlson for giving fascist Fuentes a platform, Roberts filmed a video saying those opposed to Carlson are the globalist class, as he put it, and a, quote, venomous coalition, as he put it. Then he faced a backlash from non-Jew hating conservatives, of which there are many still left, and even from members of the Heritage Foundation staff, who said that those words could be read as coded references to the Jews. Roberts apologized, but taking a page from his Lord and Master and Savior Donald Trump, he then claimed ignorance, telling staff members that he did not know much about Fuentes because, quote, if you can believe this one, I don't consume a lot of news. This from someone who routinely writes news releases, appears on podcasts and TV shows all the time, is probably as well informed as any American about everything, because he has to be, when writing things like Project 2025 and propping up the Trump administration. But never mind, he said the script had been written for the video by an aide to the Heritage Foundation and that he'd only read it just before reading it. But then, in a weird twist, and forgive me for going on a little bit about this, but I think when we're talking about hiding Jews in our attics, we ought to get serious. But then a Princeton University professor said this last Monday that he had resigned from the board of the Heritage Foundation. Great, so far so good. He was saying that the conservative think tank's president had refused to take down the video in which he defended right-wing commentator Tucker Carlson's friendly interview with Nick Fuentes. Robert P. George is a professor of jurisprudence and the first such board member to reside over the action of the Heritage Foundation's president, supporting Tucker Carlson and the Fuentes interview. George had served on the group's board since 2019 and is one of the authors of Project 2025. Quote, he said, as quoted in the New York Times article today about this, I could not remain without a full reaction to the video released by Kevin Roberts speaking for and in the name of Heritage on October 30th, end quote. George wrote in a post on Facebook, quote, although Kevin, of course, first name, we're all buddies here writing 2025 together, publicly apologized for some of what he said in the video, he could not offer a full retraction of its content, so we reached an impasse. Like Pontius Pilate washing his hands after condemning Christ, Robert George wants out. But here's the irony. Far-right activists like George and the other board members of the Heritage Foundation now want to draw the line at Carlson's embarrassing turn to the Jew-baiting far right. But George and others like him are the people who contributed to the extremist fanatical right wing themselves and are largely responsible for its present-day Trumpist, MAGA fanaticism. In other words, you might ask, who is responsible for the mindset that puts Fuentes on Tucker Carlson's interview? Why did he think he could get away with this? My answer would be this. Amongst other far-right activists, Princeton professor Robert George long ago plunged us all into today's theocratic Christian nationalist politics. George, for instance, was the de facto father of the twin war against gays and the war against women for the last, 25, 30 years? And he had the support of U.S. Roman Catholic bishops who are now saying that in the matter of, say, arresting a 3-year-old and dragging her away from her father as he's loaded into a van by masked ICE agents, things have gone too far. But these same bishops and the Mormon leadership that now is trying to be more gay-friendly And the far-right members of the Supreme Court before Trump became president, like Antonin Scalia, who, by the way, was a close personal friend of Robert George and would look to Robert George for ideological direction. And George's writing is quoted or used a lot by Scalia in his writing. And most of the evangelical leaders all were united in respectable forms of bigotry. For instance, anti-gay, anti-women, that was okay. Now, George wants to draw the line when we have to ask the question, will you hide a Jew in your attic? Cloaked in the respectability of Princeton University's name, George's articles appeared in major venues, including the New York Times, for instance, that wanted to signal that they would be open to conservative commentary from time to time. Yet there has been precious little critical examination of the outright falsehoods he and his fellow travelers on the far right spread. I debated Robert George way back in the day at Princeton University. I think it was in the 2008 political season. He was supporting pro-life Romney, and I was defending John McCain, whom George was attacking because McCain was, according to George, insufficiently anti-abortion and anti-gay. I was out campaigning for McCain in that and other election seasons as a Republican, the kind of Republican that my friend Jack Kemp used to be, Congressman Jack Kemp. By the way, in case you're young and don't remember a time like this, there was a day when there were Republicans that held views that embraced all humankind, including gay people and women and Black people. Hard to imagine these days. George was also a founder of the so-called National Organization of Marriage, NOME, and George was an author of the anti-gay NOME, quote, pledge signed by Mitt Romney. And through his association with Romney and others, George relentlessly injected the anti-woman, anti-gay political assault into one American election season after another. Okay, fast forward. Today, as a result, the Republican Party finds itself endorsing George's ultra-conservative interpretation of Roman Catholic dogma through Project 2025 when it comes to gay rights, women's rights, contraception, and a host of other, quote, litmus test issues that have driven millions of American evangelical writers continuously moving to the right to back the adulterer, woman molester, accused of rape, Donald Trump. Ironic, isn't it? We may look back at one of George's efforts that's outstanding for its symbolism today as he tries to bail from backing Heritage Foundation because they won't significantly detach themselves from Jew baiting. For instance, the so-called Manhattan Declaration that he co-authored with a family friend of mine, the late evangelical leader, Tucker Carlson, who was a good friend of my dad, and in fact quoted Dad all the time in his own books. And he, by the way, for those of you who weren't around then, was Richard Nixon's hatchet man, the most vicious person in his circle, and then converted to Jesus while he was in jail for things to do with the Watergate fiasco. But Colson and George were united in attacking women's rights and gay rights, and their declaration was co-signed by thousands of evangelicals and a who's who of conservative leaders, some of whom will join in Fuentes' anti-Jew crusade now, some of whom will bail because they still want to be respectable. But now Tucker Carlson has gone the next step and added Jews to the people George already targeted, including gays and women. And now some Republicans want to draw the line at the next right-wing inevitable step, Jew baiting and Jew hating. But now they have opened the door to dividing America into them and us. And they say that anybody that opposes us, the evangelical white Christian, the conservative Roman Catholic Christian, whomever, the Jew baiting Tucker Carlson follower, is demonically possessed, and that they are fighting principalities and powers, to use the biblical reference, against the demonic host led by Satan himself in this great last battle. But of course, the prophecy in the New Testament that Tucker Carlson finds so enlightening says that in the end, most Jews will be killed when Jesus returns and rules the earth with his Christian white nationalists. and that anyone who opposes this idea is demonic. In fact, Carlson said that he had had battles with demons in his bed and he woke up with scratches on his bodies. I kid you not, look it up. Fighting with demons in the night. But of course, then again, so much of the German high command in the 1940s was also into the Battle of the Principalities, but they called the great fathers of war and Wotan to help them. The kind of Wagnerian idea. So we've been here before. So I'm going to ask you, is there a better way? I think there is. Let me tell you, it'll take me a second to pick up my little dog Zip. My little dog Zip right here, my pet. Forgive me. I think this is the better way. No, I'm not being a sentimental fool because you see, Zip doesn't hate Jews. Zip doesn't hate Black people. Zip doesn't hate women. Zip, if he had a creed, would be it's the survival of the friendliest, not the survival of the fittest. So Zip and I, and okay, now I am being cute, but we wrote a book. And it's called The Gospel of Zip, a canine human love story exploring why most dogs and a few humans live joyful lives. And yes, I'm pitching my book, but it's available on YouTube for free. So unlike the Bitcoin operators of the White House making deals with the Saudis, this isn't about me making some money. Okay, there's a little ego involved. I'd like you to read it. It's available from Amazon, but it's also for free on YouTube. And I read the whole damn thing, 8 hours of it, and had it professionally filmed by a wonderful director, my friend Bob, who came into my house. And it's on YouTube right now. And as of this commentary recording, it has a little over 3,000 views. I hope for many more. Please look at it. And if you can spring for the book, okay, buy it. In the Gospel of Zip, I take a dog's point of view as best I understand this little guy. And that Jews, women, gays, and the rest of us have one thing in common. We can love and care for each other. Just like my beloved dog Zip loves and cares for me. By the way, he warms my atrophied leg that when I got polio in 1952, and it's been cold ever since, amongst other things. And every night he crawls into my bed and warms it. I didn't train him, but he does it because he loves me. And he would do that if I was Jewish or Black or a woman or a Muslim. He'd do it if I was an atheist. I call myself an atheist who prays. Go figure. But paradox is what we all really live with. But I want to end with this question. Given where the Heritage Foundation has gone and Project 2025 has gone and MAGA and Tucker Carlson and Trump have gone, Trump with his dinner guest Fuentes, we had no objection feeding. He said, I didn't know anything about him either. Amazing how the president of the United States doesn't follow the news, and nor does the Heritage Foundation. Go figure. But given the direction of the Christian nationalist white right, I ask again, in the coming decades in America, if we pursue this path, will you hide a Jew in your attic? My name is Frank Schaefer.